This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, I'm Roby Brock. First up today, Senator Tom Cotton. He was in studio earlier last week before some of the late week's events developed, but it still afforded us an opportunity to discuss a multitude of topics. We begin with a supposedly new military strategy in Afghanistan. On Monday night, President Donald Trump outlines a policy on Afghanistan. It had some similarities to what we have seen over the last 16 years from Presidents Bush, President Obama. You say you agree with the approach. You put out a pretty strong statement of support on this. How do you think this newest effort is going to be better than what we've done for the last decade and a half?
Well, there's no doubt that our approach to Afghanistan have taken some twists and turns and moved from side to side a little bit over the last 16 years, more so than I or most Americans would like to see. But that's been especially the case over the last 4 or 5 years. President Obama added more troops early in his tenure, but he announced their withdrawal in advance, which meant the bad guys just had to wait us out. And there was always, throughout the end of his administration, the risk that we're going to pull out completely. And one thing in my conversations with the president that I stressed and that he understood is that we cannot allow to happen in Afghanistan in 2017 what happened in Mosul, Iraq in 2014. Pull out, leave a vacuum in the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda takeover.
Right.
We also can't allow Iran to exert the influence in Afghanistan that it's already doing in Iraq. So I think the president recognized that. He recognized that we need to refocus on our core mission in Afghanistan, which is to ensure that the Taliban and its associated terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State don't have the freedom of action and freedom of movement there to carefully and deliberately plot another mass terror attack like they did on 9/11. So the big difference is, I would say, between what President Trump announced this week and what we saw in the last several years from the Obama administration is, one, we're going to take a much tougher approach towards those groups. The rules of engagement are probably going to be expanded to allow broader targeting, so they're going to feel the pain very quickly. Mm-hmm. Two, we're going to look at a regional approach where we put more pressure on the Pakistani government that is going to have to start working more carefully with us to try to root out these terrorist organizations that are in the Afghan-Pakistan border areas. And three, we're not announcing our withdrawal. We're not saying that we're going to set arbitrary numbers on troop levels. We're going to say that conditions on the ground and that core mission is going to drive the resources and the troops we commit to Afghanistan and the time we're there.
Do you think we are in Afghanistan permanently? And by that I mean over the long run. You look at the U.S. post-World War II in Germany and South Korea, Turkey, different places around the world. We're never going to leave Afghanistan, are we? The terrorists are always going to be, there's always going to be a hotbed and a possibility. Are we there permanently?
So I don't think we're there permanently, but we might have this small troop presence there for some number of years. That doesn't mean they're going to be out kicking down doors and pulling triggers. We may have some special operations forces that are doing that, but the bulk of the forces there are providing combat support, training, advising, and assisting functions for the Afghan Army. The Afghan Army has a lot of troops. They're out on the front lines. They're doing the patrolling, but they don't have the kind of aviation capabilities or intelligence capabilities or logistics capabilities that our professional world-class Army has. So we're providing a lot of those support functions as well as training those Afghan forces. The goal there is to build the capacity and the capabilities that they need to be able to police their own territory and to work together with some of the tribal leaders in the outlying areas of Afghanistan to accomplish what our core mission is, which is denying the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and ISIS the safe haven they need to launch attacks against the United States.
So were you, there's not enough positions in place at the State Department and potentially at the other levels of federal government to implement this from not just a military perspective, but from all the other perspectives that need to be there?
Well, the State Department plays an important role in Afghanistan. We had State Department representatives on my reconstruction team in Afghanistan when I was there in 2008 and 2009. But security has to come first. That's the basic lesson that I learned in Iraq and Afghanistan that I think our country has learned in those places. That without security and without stability, there's very little opportunity for diplomacy or economic development or stable government.
All right, let's turn our attention back to the domestic front here. A lot of explosion on the front centered around race and race relations here since the Charlottesville incident a couple of weeks ago. And it has centered a new debate on this need or purpose for having Confederate monuments in the South in particular. Do you think that that debate is one worth having? Do we need to talk about what these Confederate monuments symbolize? Do they motivate these contemptible little men, as you called some of the white supremacists that were out there?
The former Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, I thought made a good point, is that it's good to have our history in front of us. The Civil War was the worst war in American history. More Americans died in that war almost than every other war combined. And that's something that we should never let the next generation of Americans forget, nor should we forget why we fought the Civil War. It was to vindicate the founding promise of America, that all men are created equal and they're endowed by God with equal rights, no matter their race, their sex, or any other thing.
It did lead to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. So,
yes,
right.
Which in their own way are the most enduring monuments of the Civil War. As Abraham Lincoln said in the second inaugural as well, this is not something that the South did alone. This was something that America had done, and that he viewed the Civil War as something that America had to go through together, that both the North and the South had to take responsibility for what had happened through the sin of slavery, and that was the basis for a just and lasting peace and reunification of the country. So I think it's appropriate to have the debate about these monuments. I think it's best had at local levels in our cities, in our counties, in our states, rather than trying to impose a one-size-fits-all approach. True. And I think that there are certainly grounds for discriminating and distinguishing between types of monuments or the people to whom you build those. Robert E. Lee was a great general who made a bad mistake. He went on to help promote reconciliation and peaceful reunification, for instance. There are other people who were in the Civil War who could not make that claim. So I think it's appropriate to have those kind of debates. I don't think it's healthy to try to paint with a broad brush or to take these monuments down in the middle of the night, or for vandals to go out and destroy them either. I think the healthiest thing in the long run is to let a democratic debate proceed and let peoples decide what they want to do, whether that's at the city, county, or state level.
All right, we'll watch as that unfolds. All right, I'm going to do some quick hits here, so you got to speak in sound bites at this point.
I'm a senator. I'm going to give you long answers.
I know. A bunch of things on the congressional agenda when you guys come back. 30 seconds or less. What's going to happen on health care?
I don't know what's going to happen on health care, to be honest with you. Obamacare is not getting better, and we're going to have to revisit health care. That may not happen next month. It may not happen the next 4 months, but too many Arkansans are still going to pay premiums that are increasing and losing access to their doctors. So that may be more targeted, specific reforms to try to bring down the cost of insurance for Arkansans, but trying to repeal Obamacare, as we did over the summer, is not going to be on the immediate agenda, because it was clear that we didn't have the votes to do so, as much as I would like to have done so.
30 seconds or less. What's going to happen on taxes when you get back?
I think we'll get a tax bill passed.
What will it look like?
Hopefully it'll look good for Arkansas businesses and families. Put a little more money in the pockets of Arkansas families at the end of the month and at the end of the year, and make it easier for our businesses to comply with the tax code and spend more money on their employees and on their customers, as opposed to spending it to Uncle Sam.
Debt ceiling, 30 seconds or less. What's going to happen on that?
Well, the debt ceiling will be increased. I hope it's increased with some kind of accompanying reforms to our budgeting and our spending processes.
Will you vote for it either way?
I'll wait and see what the final legislation looks like.
Maybe.
But the debt ceiling has frequently, in recent times, been an occasion when you can adopt reforms that hopefully result in spending a little bit less and spending taxpayer dollars more wisely. That's what I would like to see.
All right. Last question for you. You want to make a prediction for the Razorback football record? Season's about to kick off.
14-0?
Oh, man. That's possible, yes. All right.
Great season to honor Frank Morris's memory.
He knows how to play his politics on the Razorbacks. Tom Cotton, always good to be with you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Robbie.
All right. Well, that's Senator Tom Cotton with quite a prediction there. You can catch his full interview on our website at talkbusiness.net.